Today we're reading out of As Bill Sees It, the references to open-mindedness. Michael's going to start us on page 7.
Page 7, the realm of the spirit. In ancient times, material progress was painfully slow. The spirit of modern scientific inquiry, research, and invention was almost unknown. In the realm of the material, men's minds were fettered by superstition, tradition, and all sorts of fixed ideas. Some of the contemporaries of Columbus thought a round earth preposterous. Others came near putting Galileo to death for his astronomical heresies. Are not some of us just as biased and unreasonable about the realm of the spirit as were the ancients about the realm of the material? We have found that God does not make too hard terms with those who seek him. To us, the realm of the spirit is broad, roomy, all-inclusive, never exclusive or forbidding to those who earnestly seek. It is open, we believe, to all men.
Our next reading is on page 26. True independence of the spirit. The more we became willing to depend upon a higher power, the more independent we actually are. Therefore, dependence, as AA practices it, is really a means of gaining true independence of the spirit. At the level of everyday living, it is startling to discover how dependent we really are and how unconscious of that dependence. Every modern house has electric wiring carrying power and light to its interior. By accepting with delight our dependence upon this marvel of science, we find ourselves personally more independent, more comfortable, and secure. Power flows just where it is needed. Silent and surely, electricity, that strange energy so few people understand, meets our simplest daily needs. Though we readily accept this principle of healthy dependence in many of our temporal affairs, we often fiercely resist the identical principle when asked to apply it as a means of growth in the life of the spirit. Clearly, we shall never know freedom under God until we try to seek his will for us. The choice is ours.
Okay, then page 87, Keystone of the Arch. Faced with alcoholic destruction, we became open-minded on spiritual matters. In this respect, alcohol was a great persuader. It finally beat us into a state of reasonableness. We had to quit playing God. It didn't work. We decided that hereafter, in this drama of life, God was going to be our director. He would be the principal, we, his agents. Most good ideas are simple, and this concept was the keystone of the new triumphal arch through which we passed to freedom.
Okay, 115. Essence of growth. Let us never fear needed change. Certainly, we have to discriminate between changes for worse and changes for better. But once a need becomes clearly apparent in an individual, in a group, or in AA as a whole, it has long since been found that we cannot stand still and look the other way. The essence of all growth is a willingness to change for the better, and then an unremitting willingness to shoulder whatever responsibility this entails.
Page 119, On the Broad Highway. I now realize that my former prejudice against clergymen was blind and wrong. They have kept alive through the centuries a faith which might have been extinguished entirely. They pointed out the road to me, but I did not even look up. I was so full of prejudice and self-concern. When I did open my eyes, it was because I had to. And the man who showed me the truth was a fellow sufferer and a layman. Through him, I saw at last, and I stepped from the abyss to solid ground, knowing at once that my feet were on the broad highway if I chose to walk.
137. Beyond agnosticism. We of agnostic temperament found that as soon as we were able to lay aside prejudice and express even a willingness to believe in a power greater than ourselves, we commenced to get results, even though it was impossible for any of us to fully define or comprehend that power, which is God. Many people soberly assure me that man has no better place in the universe than that of another competing organism, finding its way through life only to perish in the end. Hearing this, I feel that I still prefer to cling to the so-called illusion of religion, which in my own experience has meaningfully told me something very different.
Here's page 152, miraculous power. Deep down in every man, woman, and child is the fundamental idea of a God. It may be obscured by calamity, by pomp, by worship of other things, but in some form or other, it is there. For faith in a power greater than ourselves and miraculous demonstrations of that power in human lives are facts as old as man himself. Faith may often be given through inspired teaching or a convincing personal example of its fruits. It may sometimes be had through reason. For instance, many clergymen believe that St. Thomas Aquinas actually proved God's existence by sheer logic. But what can one do when all these channels fail? This was my own grievous dilemma. It was only when I came fully to believe I was powerless over alcohol, only when I appealed to a God that just might exist, that I experienced a spiritual awakening. The freedom-giving experience came first, and then faith followed afterward. A gift indeed.
174. Constructive forces. Mine was exactly the kind of deep-seated block we so often see today in new people who say that they are atheistic or agnostic. Their will to disbelieve is so powerful that apparently they prefer a date with the undertaker to an open-minded and experimental quest for God. Happily for me, and for most of my kind, who have long since come in AA, the constructive forces brought to bear in our fellowship have nearly always overcome this colossal obstinacy. Beaten into complete defeat by alcohol, confronted by the living proof of release, and surrounded by those who can speak to us from the heart, we have finally surrendered. And then, paradoxically, we found ourselves in a new dimension, the real world of the Spirit and faith. Enough willingness, enough open-mindedness, and there it is.
189, experimenters. We agnostics liked AA all right. We were quick to say that it had done miracles. But we recoiled from meditation and prayer as obstinately as a scientist who refused to perform a certain experiment lest it prove his pet theory was wrong. When we finally did experiment and unexpected results followed, we felt different. In fact, we knew different. And so we were sold on meditation and prayer. And that we have found can happen to anybody who tries. It has been well said that almost the only scoffers at prayer are those who never tried it enough.
219. Willing to believe. Do not let any prejudice you have against spiritual terms deter you from honestly asking yourself what they might mean to you. At the start, this was all we needed to commence spiritual growth, to affect our first conscious relation with God as we understood Him. Afterward, we found ourselves accepting many things which had seemed entirely out of reach. That was growth. But if we wished to grow, we had to begin somewhere. So at first, we used our own concept of God, however limited they were. We needed to ask ourselves but one short question. Do I now believe, or am I willing to believe, that there is a power greater than myself? As soon as a man can say that he does believe, even in this small degree, or is willing to believe, we emphatically assure him he is on his way.
247. Have you experimented? Since open-mindedness and experimentation are supposed to be the indispensable attributes of our scientific civilization, it seems strange that so many scientists are reluctant to try it out personally, the hypothesis that God came first and man afterward. They prefer to believe that man is the chance product of evolution, that God, the creator, does not exist. I can only report that I have experimented with both concepts and that, in my case, the God concept has proved a better basis for living than the man-centered one. Nevertheless, I would be the first to defend your right to think as you will. I simply ask this question in your own life. Have you ever really tried to think and act as though there might be a God? Have you experimented?
260. Inward reality. It is being constantly revealed as mankind studies the material world that its outward appearance is not inward reality at all. The prostatic steel girder is a mass of electrons whirling around each other at incredible speed, and these tiny bodies are governed by precise laws. Science tells us so. We have no reason to doubt it. When, however, the perfectly logical assumption is suggested that infinitely beyond the material world as we see it, there is an all-powerful, guiding, creative intelligence, our perverse streak comes to the surface, and we set out to convince ourselves that this isn't so. Were our contention true, it would follow that life originated out of nothing, means nothing, and proceeds nowhere.
Okay, 300. I can get there. 300. People of faith. We also have traveled a path through agnosticism or atheism. Beg you to lay aside prejudice, even against organized religion. You have learned that whatever the human frailties of various faiths may be, those faiths have given purpose and direction to millions. People of faith have a rational idea of what life is all about. Actually, we used to have no reasonable conception whatever. We used to amuse ourselves by cynically dissecting spiritual beliefs and practices when we might have seen that many spiritually minded persons of all races, colors, and creeds were demonstrating a degree of stability, happiness, and usefulness that we should have sought for ourselves.
Okay, and our final reading on 313. In the sunlight at last. When we thought we expressed that there might be a God personal to me, I didn't like the idea. So my friend Ebby made what seemed a novel suggestion. He said, "Why don't you choose your own conception of God?" That statement hit me hard. It melted the icy intellectual mountain in whose shadow I had lived and shivered many years. I stood in the sunlight at last. It may be possible to find explanations of spiritual experiences such as ours, but I have often tried to explain my own and have succeeded only in giving the story of it. I know the feeling it gave me and the results it has brought, but I realize I may never fully understand its deeper why and how.